Thank you very much, Kathy. Let me just go ahead and get the screen, folks, and we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Hugs and stitches to you all. This is indeed Walter Floriani. I am very, very excited about tonight's webinar. We have an enormous amount of you online with us right now, and you all got to know that pumps me up. Look, we're going to talk about getting creative with the software, and I've felt since the beginning that in the development of my Floriani software that it has, or at least for me, and in my opinion, I truly think it's one, if not the finest, one of, if not the finest, most creative piece of embroidery software that's been developed to date. There are a lot of functions. This could be a 3-hour class. But I want to try to start simple initially, folks, and we'll continue on with webinars in this venue. But when we look at software, and even when I look at my software, those of you that have seen me give my classes, I talk about the simplicity of embroidery. How embroidery is nothing more than 3 defined stitch types: running stitches, satin stitches, and fill stitches. And then, and I won't get into it right now, but embroidery is also nothing more than very simple combinations of stitches. When you look at a piece of software, and even looking at mine, and we look up here at the top of the toolbar, manual stitching, run stitching, there's our satin stitches, complex fill stitches, but we've got steel stitching, we've got applique stitching, we've got cross stitch stitching, we've got tackle twill stitching. The fact is, though, folks, and as I go through it, I'll point it out, it's still, no matter what we may call a technique or a stitch type, a cross stitch per se, it's running stitches. In some of the creative aspects of how we can take a stitch type and turn it into, I'm not sure what's going on with my computer right now, how we can take a stitch type and make it more creative. It's still one of those base 3 stitch types. So my theme the rest of this year and all next year is to even more simplify the process and how I talk about the process, even more so. I hope you'll find it enjoyable. I think that when you simplify, you amplify. And when you look at embroidery, and you simply understand that I've always said that there's fear factors to creating an embroidery design. You'll look at a design or you'll look at a special effect and you'll say, oh my gosh, an example with designs. I was in the golf industry for many, many years. And when I would drive through Palm Springs in California, I'd see these very intricate golf logos. And I swear to you all, I'd sit there and go, oh my gosh, hope nobody orders that one. There is a fear factor. Just a second. There is a fear factor to creating designs. They can look difficult. But part of this starting off and wanting to touch on this just for a minute without doing anything on the screen is that what one needs to do in all designs, in all techniques, is that begin to look at your embroidery designs truly as stitch types, not images, okay? And I guess just to amplify that a little bit more, when I talk and I teach about embroidery being combinations of stitches like fill stitches next to satin stitches, the fact is that when you're taught how to put a fill stitch next to a satin stitch correctly, it's always a fill stitch next to a satin stitch, folks. It helps take away the fear factor. Stitch types next to other stitch types, and the rules for putting them together never changes. Okay? The stitch types, again, and the combinations of stitches, it's repetitive, and it is simple. So I know I've already deviated from where we're going with this class, but I want to always bring that out, no matter what I may bring up on the screen, no matter what design you may look at. It's just one of 3 stitch types with simples rules and one of 6 combinations of stitches with even simpler rules. don't look at an embroidery creation necessarily as the design. Certainly, we look at aspects of a design to create the dimension and such, but in its simplest form, look at it as a stitch type. Learn the rules to the stitch type. The software, as much as we have been able to automate it, and where we're going to go deeper and further into it, is to automate those rules into it. That is one of the things we're so proud of with the software. DJ and I and the entire group, we spend an enormous amount of time trying to implant real embroidery rules into the stitch types. Now, let's get started, because we also spend an enormous amount of time giving you these stitch types and then giving you an ability to do things with the stitch type, converting them to other stitch types, utilizing motifs and such, to take it to a whole nother level. So, as rudimentary as I can be, I will, number one, start with every stitch type. The manual is going to be real easy to go through. The manual stitch is a manual stitch. There's not a lot that you can do with it other than when you choose one and you left click, you're dropping the needle, okay? A manual stitch is just what it sounds like. Can it be creative? Absolutely. The finest of detail, the most minute lettering and such is normally achieved. Double run stitch lettering is achieved with a double run stitch. And you know what? I guess I could amplify this a little more simply by bringing up a design of minute lettering that is achieved only with a manual stitch. Now look, one of the things that I'm very, very proud of is that we created last year one of the world's first, if not the world's first, running stitch keyboard lettering. When you want to get into minute lettering, excuse me, I'm looking in the wrong file. I'm talking and I'm looking at the same time. But when you want to get into minute lettering, it's done with a run stitch. We developed the first, or one of the first run stitch letters. But in reality, when you want to get into even more minute lettering, it is actually done with a manual stitch. One stitch at a time digitizing. And where's my design? Hold on one second. I know exactly where it is. It's down here in my... Sorry, I should have had this already up there. I'll just bring up the measurement technique. Excuse me. Get that on the screen. Look, for lettering, when you want to get down into, let's say, like 3mm lettering. I don't have the artwork up there. I just have the design. It needs to be achieved with a double run stitch. So a creative effect that you can do with a double run stitch, or I should say one of the challenges with creating minute work with a manual stitch, is that, and we're just going to look at, let's just say the word measure right here. I'll zoom into that. Every letter in this word measure needs to be done with a double run stitch. Now, yes, you have the ability to choose a run stitch right next to the manual stitch, and you can say make it a 2-ply. That's a double run stitch. But when you're doing minute work and minute lettering, you don't want a lot of trims involved in that. You want to create what I call a perfect path. We want to do each letter in this twice and only twice. Well, look, if I wanted to do the M twice, and I'll go ahead and just grab my manual stitch, and I'm going to grab another color here, and I'll actually mark the needle penetration points. If I started right here, I could drop a stitch here, drop a stitch here, drop a stitch here. I'll make it look 3D in just a second. In fact, I can make it look 3D right now. Let me get to the end here. Just right to here. I think making it look 3D will show it better. So I started here in the M and I walked over here. That's once. Now I want to do it a second time. So I would click back there. That would be 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. Okay? I can then come into the letter E right here. The M was done perfectly twice. But now I want to do the E perfectly twice. And here comes the issue with minute special effects. If I want to enter the letter E on the bottom left, exit on the bottom right, I could come up here and very simply go up, that's once, that would be twice, that's once, that's twice, twice, once, twice, twice, but now look at the bottom. once, twice, and now I have to go a third time, okay? Why I have to go a third time is, again, I want to exit the letter E. Same thing in the A. I'll just come here to the A and start stitching it. I could come here in the A, drop a stitch, drop a stitch, drop a stitch, drop a stitch. That's once. I'd come back, that's twice, that's twice, that's twice, that's once, that's twice, that's twice. The letter A is now perfectly twice, but now I've got to make a movement over to this S. I don't want all those trim outs, and you have to do each one twice and only twice because, folks, thread has weight, measurable weight. Doing part of it once, doing part of it 2 or 3 times, it looks different. One strand of thread looks different than 2, looks different than 3. You want continuity to that small letter. So I'm going to show you a very simple, very creative technique with creating minute work, okay, and doing every one of them twice and only twice. And in this case, again, we've chosen our manual stitch. I'll pick my color red. I'm going to start on the bottom left of the M and click there once, click there once, click there once. I'm right there. I'm going to click there, click down at the bottom in the center, drop a stitch right there. And again, manual stitch. Every place I left click, I'm dropping the stitch. So I've done the letter M once. I'm right here. Now to hide tiny little stitches, and it is an extremely creative aspect to hiding stitches when you connect small lettering that's spaced very close, about 0.8 to 1 millimeter apart. I'm going to drop 2 to 3 tiny little stitches in between the M and the E. And I'm right here in the E now. Why? Those tiny little stitches drive down into the fabric. Not only is it creative, it hides those stitches. You'll never have to trim that little thread out. When I see like keyboard lettering or digitized lettering and it finishes a letter and steps into the next letter, that thread drives me crazy. I physically have to stop the machine and trim it out then. It drives me that crazy. Dropping tiny stitches in between small lettering eliminates that. It hides the stitches. You're making your embroidery a continuous filament of thread. So I'm here on the bottom left of the E. I step across to the bottom right of the B. I'm right there. I take another stitch or 2 into the letter A, come up the left side of the A, come down the bottom or the right side of the letter A. I'm right there. A couple tiny little stitches into the letter S. Going to step down here, right here. A couple tiny little stitches into the letter U. Come right down here, step right up, right here to the center. 2 to 3 tiny little stitches into the R. Step across the letter R here, step down to the bottom right. I'm right there. 2 to 3 tiny little stitches into the letter E. Okay, I'm right there. What I've done is I've made a continuous filament of thread with one path, just one continuous thread line from the beginning to the end of that word measure. I'm right here. To do it twice now and perfectly twice, it's so simple. Step up to the center, step up to the top left, step out to the top right, come back, that's twice. Coming back down, that's twice. Step out in the center, that's once. Come back, that's twice. Come down to the bottom, that's twice. Step out to the right, that's once. Come back, that's twice. The letter E is perfectly twice. Couple tiny little stitches back into the letter R. Step right up here, follow the path back, then work your way around. That would be once, that would be once. Once, once, once. Come back, that's twice. That's twice, that's twice, that's twice, that's twice. That's twice. The letter R is now perfectly twice. 2 to 3 stitches back into the letter U. Step up, that's one. Come back, that's twice. That's twice. That's twice. That's twice. Come up the left side, that's once, once. Come back down twice, twice to the junction point, perfectly twice. Couple tiny little stitches back into the S. Work your way up the top of the S. I'm up here at the top now. Work your way back. That's now twice, 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 twice. 2 to 3 stitches back into the letter A. Come up here, that's twice. That would be twice. That would be twice. Step across the crossbar once. Come back, that's twice. That's twice, perfectly twice. 2 to 3 back into the letter E. The bottom is now done twice. Work my way up the left side, shoot out to the top right. Come back, that's twice. Come back down twice. There's once, there's twice. There's twice. The letter E is perfectly twice. 2 to 3 stitches back into the letter M. That's twice, 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 I put a little lock stitch and I get the heck out of town. The manual stitch is actually the simplest stitch to throw in the fact that it's just a series of left clicks. But it is one of the most difficult stitches to master because of that same point. You're in control of every stitch. But some very simple exercises in just what you saw me do. And a very simple hint. You've got very minute letter. You measure it simply by taking your ruler in Floriani software and measuring its width. It's going to tell you right there it wants to be a run stitch. If it is small. Now, number one, I try it with the keyboard font. But if the lettering is a little too small, because realize too, one of the things we just did to amplify your creativity, it's not just software, it's product. We just released our new micro thread. In the stores very soon, if it's not already in the stores. The finer the yarn, the finer the detail. You can go small lettering. With the keyboard font, you can go down to about 4 millimeters. I'll guarantee you I can go down to 3 millimeters with perfect clarity utilizing my micro thread with a double run stitch. Unfortunately, to figure this out mathematically and put it automatic into the program, I'm not sure it can take place because the way that you have to pass through every letter is based on what letter it might be next to. And it's going to take a while for a computer to figure out the mathematical compilation to do that. Easy with a bean stitch because a bean stitch is a forward progression stitch. And if you add a fourth time to it, it doesn't take away from the look. Double run stitch for minute structures is one of the highest form of digitizing. If you have even keyboard lettering that you bring up onto the screen and it's too narrow. See, when I make very small lettering, I use my keyboard. I bring it up on the screen. If it's telling me it should be a run, I leave it on the screen, select another color, and I path right on top of it like this. I do have videos on this. It's certainly, this lesson is also in my book. I'm not going to spend any more time right here, but when you do a manual stitch, you also have to realize you've taken a step back more than 100 years in the embroidery process. You're back to the essence, one stitch at a time embroidery creation, while it being the simplest, and again, it's back to simplicity, it is the most difficult to some aspect stitch to master. But give it a try, folks. I think you'll find that you can amaze yourself with just a little bit of effort with that manual stitch. Let's go ahead and move to the running stitch. Running stitch, basically, it's a manual stitch. Running stitch is just for all fine line embroidery work. The differential is that when I select that manual stitch, I am dropping the stitch, meaning every time I left click, I'm dropping the stitch. The length will vary. In a running stitch, you're setting a preset stitch length, in this case of 3 millimeters. That means basically every 3 millimeters along that line, and certainly indicated by those little black dots, every 3 millimeters that needle is going to drop, okay? Now, the first selection you get for creativity, standard. Standard is a one-time run stitch. The other, or the initial other two, are pretty simple. By selecting a two-ply, by selecting the stitch, by selecting the stitch, a two-ply is a double run stitch, meaning if I started here on the left, it's going to walk out to the right, it's going to come back to the left. It's a double run stitch. Once you get into a bean stitch is normally a three-ply run stitch. I'll zoom in. The way that it works is that the stitch will move out, back, it'll move forward, back, and out, forward, back, and out, forward, back, and out, or forward, back, forward, back, forward. But one of the really nice things that we just did to the bean stitch, and this was also developed in our quilting software in MDQ, is you now have the bean repeat. You can actually go now 3, 5, 7, and 9. What's the value of that from a creative standpoint? Look, by elongating the stitch length to 3 or 4 millimeters, and let's say we're doing red work, making a quilt block, and we're going to use some batting material. By adding some extra repeats, you're going to increase the puff because you're actually increasing the compression into the fabric. So you have now this wonderful selection of 3 times, 5 times, 7 times, up to 9 times with your bean stitch. You know what, folks? Take a piece of batting material, put it behind a cloth, and just run a very simple red work design, or just sit there and freehand stitch on it, stipple. Just freehand stipple, or we'll get to the auto stippling in a little bit, okay? But just stipple, use multiple repeats. Go from a 3 to a 5 to a 7 and a 9. Make 2 or 3 different samples. My dad, in teaching me the process, always conformed or always taught me that to become incredibly creative in this process, you had to make a little time to take a little time to play. That means that as software developed, you see, 20 some years ago, everything was done with the manual stitch, 1 stitch at a time digitizing. But as software has developed and we now have stitch types and we can add different functionality to it, and that's what this class is all about, the different functions applied to a base stitch type. You're creating different effects. It is so worthy to just make square boxes, to do simple stippling, to add multiple repeats, use a piece of batting material. You'll see the differential. The puff and the dimensional aspects when you add additional repeats to that bean stitch, it's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, with the run stitch, 2 things that I love is that you can also apply your motifs to the run stitch. You have a whole series of motifs. Those motif designs are located in the software, but when you click on motif, you can click your down arrow and you'll see all of the motifs that come into the software. Want to apply a motif to that running stitch line? Select the one you want and simply hit apply. Okay? Now, you can vary the sizing on that simply by varying the pattern length. So if you want to go smaller, you just lower the number. If you want to go larger, just vary the number. It will change certainly the number of them along that line. And indeed, everything I've shown you so far still is a run stitch. Okay? But now where it deviates, and again, this is where I want to try to keep it simple but explain this. You also have the ability to apply to any singular run stitch a series of symbols, okay? By clicking, let me show you where I did that again. When you click on your down arrow, you're going to see a list of all of the symbols that you have. By clicking on these 4 little dots to the right of that, or I don't have my glasses on, that might just be 3 little dots. It's 3 little dots. By clicking on those 3 little dots, it will actually bring up the images of every one of those symbols, okay? So, example, the first one is set as an anchor. It's right here. I can simply select the anchor, click OK, click apply, and it applies the anchors to that. I have the needle penetration point showing, okay? Now, quick deviation. I just made a run stitch. Now I'm applying an anchor to it. Look at the anchor. The anchor is satin stitches. So even though you programmed a run stitch, the fact is now, because we keep getting and being able to expand the functionality of a stitch type and what one can apply to it, I don't want, especially a novice, someone getting started thinking you're creating a run stitch. You're now utilizing a satin stitch along a running stitch path. You can also, other than selecting here or with these 3 little buttons, you do have access with this icon to all your symbols also just by clicking on select. You can also use these symbols. Let me just open up another page. You can use these symbols as, let's say, stock embroidery designs. If I wanted to take this basketball design, double click on it, and I could have clicked on it, clicked OK, up it would have come on the screen. But another creative aspect for wanting to merge or using multiples of it, because now I can left click, hold, and drag, and I can bring those symbols in from this standpoint also and create whole new designs. And if you haven't seen it before, we've now put stitches on top of other stitches. Those of you who know me know that I despise packing stitches on top of other stitches. If you simply select the one on top, right click and say remove your overlaps, it will pull the stitches out from the design below it, so you're not creating bulletproof embroidery. All right. So look and review. Simple run stitch. You have the ability to go single, double, bean stitch with now a repeat up to 9, applying motifs to it and applying the symbols. We'll look at those symbols a little more in just a little while. You then have your satin stitch. Now, let me begin by explaining that with a satin stitch, you actually have multiple choices. There is what we call an input satin path. Next to it is called a classic satin. There are a few differentials. Number one differential is input. If I want to create a letter I with an input satin path, all right, I will select my input satin path. I'm going to do everything on 3D. I think you'll see it better. I'm on the top left of the letter I. I'm going to left click on the top left of, let's say, a letter I. I'm going to come to the bottom left side and left click. I'm going to right click to go over now to the bottom right side and then apply another left click. I'm going to left click on the top right of the letter I, and I'm going to right click to generate the stitches. Okay, I'm tired of that blue. I'm going to go to red. Okay, so again, left click top left click bottom left, a right click to to move over to the traverse, that's the word I was looking for, over to the other side, followed by a left click on the bottom right, a left click on the top right, and then a right click. The other deviation is we have what's called a classic satin. I didn't develop the classic satin, but on the software, on the machinery that I first learned to program on, we had a classic satin, or we utilized the classic satin. The differential between the two is simply an input. When I use a classic satin and I want to create a letter I left click on the top left of the letter I left click on the top right of the letter I left click on the bottom left of the letter I left click on the bottom right of the letter I, and then I right click to generate the stitches. All right? That's the difference between the two. It was added because a digitizer from, let's say, my era or generation of digitizing, we liked the classic satin. It was what we were used to. One of the things I tried to do in developing the software was I wanted to cover the spectrum. If you're just getting started, look, I would use the input satin path. We've made some really incredible advancements in it. It's easier to work. I'm not going to get into it in a lot of depth right now, but part of good digitizing are proper angles around curves and such. When you're working with a complex or a classic satin, you are the angle of the stitches. When you're working with the input satin path, the software is generating your angles. It does a magnificent job. So I truly believe most people should work with an input satin path as opposed to the classic satin. That's an opinion. Again, digitizers, I still work with the classic satin because of the ease of execution for me. Most people today, I would say, input satin path. Now, though, I'm going to make another input satin path. I'm going to just make it a little wider. So top left, bottom left with a left click, right click to get over to the bottom right, come up to the top right, left click generates the stitches. Now though, satin stitch is a satin stitch per se, but guess what else you can do with that satin? Let's select it. You have a standard satin stitch up here on the top, but you can also see how I can imply, number one, I'm going to say a contour stitch. By selecting it and hitting contour stitch and applying it, it's now going to start out on the center. I'll zoom in a little more. and it's going to scroll around. And in fact, if I run this, it actually looks pretty cool. So it's contouring to fit the structure. I'm sorry. Let me just zoom into this. And then I'll do a slow redraw so you can see how it runs. And in reality, when you watch this run, let's get that one, and here it comes now. It's moving like a fill stitch through the structure. You can actually get into certain structures where it will scroll it also. So basically, now we've taken a satin, and simply by changing it into a contour, we're giving very much the effect of a fill stitch. But get this, because we've also now applied the fact that you can come in, we can come in and now emboss. So we can come into embossing. Embossing is basically a fill stitch function. Again, we're going to take that satin and turn it into a fill, but we do give you the ability now to apply it. Why does everything keep coming up on my screen? I'm going to turn it into 3D. It never took. Did I select it? Nope. Got to select it. Come into embossing, select my embossing, and apply. And there we go. When I make it look 3D, if I zoom into it or turn it into 3D, there you'll see I've got to take it down to more on a one-to-one basis to see the embossing. But it was a really nice jump forward. So I could take, let's say, satin stitch designs that I've done. I enlarge it in size. The satin stitch maybe now needs to become a fill, which the software is capable of creating just by taking and selecting that satin, because realize that's something that you have in the software also with the satin stitch. Not only do you have a standard satin, just a base satin, but I can come in, and when you enlarge a design, a satin stitch can grow to about 7 millimeters wide before it needs to become a fill stitch. So let's say I select that, and I come into transform, and I'm going to tell this baby right now, I'm on metric. Let me go to inches because I always size in inches, and let's tell this design. It's not selecting right for me. Just 1 second, folks. We'll get it here. I want it 4 inches tall, and I want to apply it. There we go. So now I've got a 4-inch tall satin stitch. But the issue is, and this is really a simple way to check, grab your ruler after you enlarge a satin stitch. Measure across it. See, that's telling me it should be a fill stitch now. Now, one of the other creative aspects about the software, by simply, again, selecting that satin stitch, it says right here it's a standard satin. I can come in and I can apply a tatami, any one of the fill stitch types, right into that satin stitch, and I've just turned that satin stitch into a fill stitch. I use it exclusively when I'm taking a very small satin stitch of a minimal width, enlarging it 300 or 400% to where it becomes a fill. The software is creative enough to take that satin stitch and turn it into a fill. Now, most of the functionalities within the satin stitching, and especially another thing about input satin path, it is the satin stitch that you use with the magic wand. When I have a structure, and I can just bring a piece of artwork up right now, bring up this basketball design, and we'll make it just a little larger. But if I want a magic wand digitized, and this has nothing to do with the creative aspects, it's functionality. If I want to stitch that black a satin stitch, I can select my black color, get it on the screen here, right click on it, grab the satin stitch, the input satin path, grab the magic wand, left click, just give it a second. I'll then right click at the end of the function, and I've created that into a satin stitch, okay? Magic Wand digitizing, folks, only works with the input satin path. If you're working with a classic satin, and I'll go ahead and get rid of this right now, we'll get rid of that stitching, and I grab my classic satin stitch, you cannot grab the Magic Wand. It will not even articulate mathematically the way that it works because of all the curves involved. The input satin path is the only one to work that in, okay, or to work and utilize it. And next stitch type and its functionality, the steel stitch, you actually input it as a running stitch. And quite simply, what a steel stitch is, by right clicking, it makes a perfectly balanced satin width, turns it into a satin stitch, okay? But it is a satin stitch, in this case 3 millimeters. You want to make it narrower, just do a select on it. Let's say take it down to 2 millimeters, click apply, and you vary the width of it, okay? By clicking on, you do have your underlay control, your pull and push. But once it's that steel stitch, the steel stitch, it's a balance width satin stitch. Very little, there's nothing you can, a steel stitch is a steel stitch, per se, folks. Now, you do have the ability to come under convert to, and if you want to convert it to like a running stitch line, you can. You can convert it to appliques and different stitch types, okay? Cross stitch wouldn't be applicable. When you open up that convert to, it shows you all of the stitch types that you can do it with or in, but only certain are actually articulated. You could turn it into a satin. You could turn it into, if it was a complete circle, you could turn it into an applique stitch. It's actually going to follow that run stitch line, because the run stitch is such a is a stitch that we can convert to a lot of different stitches. You do get some choices, but in its base application as a steel stitch, up in the properties box, you're not going to get the choices like we had in the satin stitch or in the running stitch. Now, certainly one of the most creative stitch types in the software, you know what, I just realized I'm getting a little excited and starting to talk a little fast, so I'm going to try to slow it down, but we do have a lot to cover. The complex fill. When you click on the complex fill, look, fill stitches are very truthfully the easiest stitch, in my opinion, to digitize, because you're basically just left clicking the outlines of the structure you want to create. You don't even need to do the last one. If it's a straight line, get to the one before it, right click, and boom, you got a fill stitch, okay? But once again, the first fill stitch type that comes up, and you know what? Talk about simplicity of stitches. You know what a fill stitch is in reality, folks? I'll zoom in. It's simply a running stitch with minimum spacing of about 0.2 of a millimeter in between. Once the thread is tied to the hook, 40 weight thread measures about 0.4 of a millimeter in weight. When tied to the hook and stretched, it actually goes down to about 0.2 of a millimeter. That's why if you come into most fill stitches, how do I know that? By running some tests, but I measured the distance between stitches, 0.2 of a millimeter. That's basically when you have a full fill stitch. That's the width of your thread lying next to each other to cover the whole area. So even, we call it 3 stitch types, and I hate to keep coming back to this, but as I've taught for years, I tell people in reality, there's 1 stitch type. The blessed needle goes in, the blessed needle goes out, folks, okay? We form our runnings, we form our satins, we form our fills. I turned off the auto underlay so you can get a little better look at it. Here it is, certainly in a 3D look. Now, under the standard fill stitch in itself, you have the ability to use effects. What we've done is we've put a series of effects in here. You can make that fill stitch look like brick. There's a corn effect. This is one I've worked on called My Fill. You have different patterns. We have random. We utilize the random when we want to create hair, grass, and such. You can create smooth satin stitches when you're transforming things or going from satins to fills. It's just a look, okay? You have a smooth effect. Tatami is the normal one that we work with. Tatami is the Japanese vernacular for fill stitch, probably the one most used. We have one that creates a zigzag, but now see the one here down called golf ball. Under, I believe it is edit, you actually have a, where is it right here? Is it under the edit? Just one second. It's under tools. My apologies. You have a standard pattern creator. Let me explain something. This ability to create effects like a corn, or like a random technique. It is a mathematical compilation that we simply call a partition sequence line. One of the things, now this is applicable to just Total Control, not to Embroidery Suite for those of you out there on Embroidery Suite. But in Total Control, we opened up this library for you. Example, the design golf ball I'm working on now. If I was in the golf industry for years, if I make a big golf ball and I want it to look like a golf ball with the dimples, I've actually figured out the mathematical compilation to when that fill runs, it actually makes it look like that golf ball has dimples in there. I'm going to tell you that's nothing I would just jump right into, but as you advance into your digitizing more, we have given you now the ability to create your own special effects with a fill stitch, and you have access to that library. Below standard, you do have embossing, okay? Now we have pre-created a whole series of embossing designs. What embossing means, again, it's just preset partition line sequences. If you want that effect in your fill, select it, click apply. Just realize it's never going to show unless you're in the 3D mode, and then it will show. But now, you want to see something that's really quite cool. Look at this, okay? Same thing with giving you the access to the library portion of this file. With just a fill stitch, one of the things that you can do, and I think it is an amazing creative aspect of the fill stitch, is you can come in and say import your true type text. And you know what? I can just type my last name, Floriani, and I can click OK and bring it up to on the screen. Now realize, this is not a digitized design. This is artwork. Vector-based digitizing. I'm generating a vector-based piece of art right now. The software is seeing it as artwork without doing a thing. Simply hit File, Save As, and then what you're going to do under Save As Type is you're going to pick Emboss Pattern, the EMP extension. So you save it in the EMP extension. Now, let's go back to that fill stitch. Because I can now select it, I've got to do two things. I've got to reshape it. If you're ever going to do this, you don't want your fill stitches to stitch left to right. You want to do it more at a 45-degree angle. So let's make that angle change. Angle change is done, but I'm still in embossing. But now as I go down the list of my embossing patterns, you're going to see that my name Floriani is right down there on the bottom. Click Apply. Takes just a second, but you're going to be able to do this. This was such a cool advancement. The fact is that when you have a piece of artwork and then you generate it as artwork on the screen, basically when you save it in that EMP format, you're saving it and it is mathematically determine its partition line sequence right then. Okay? Right then. But if you think about that, you could have a piece of vector-drawn artwork, bringing it onto the screen, save it as an embossing pattern. It doesn't have to be lettering. You would be limitless with the effects that you could create in embossing. And then you'll see what I have on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and maybe you can see it a little better in yellow. But you'll see now as the fill runs, it's actually dropping the stitches and creating my last name throughout the entire fill. I think that's amazing. I ran some designs for my daughter Scarlett, put her last name in my system at home in this. And all the fill stitches that I now do and big designs that I run for have her name over and over again in it. She loves it. She absolutely loves it. So you do have your embossing patterns. You can always fill with motifs. And once again, with most motifs, when you're going to motifs, you're taking a fill stitch, which is just very tight running stitches, but now you're applying run stitch motifs to that. And you can basically apply any motif to the shape of that fill stitch, okay? So you do have the ability to create with the motifs to apply them to it. We also now have given you wonderful shapes. This was as of the last update, we gave you shapes. Let's say I want to apply this star, click star, it'll apply it. Now though, when you see this come up, and I do have it in a 3D mode, when it generates it with a very open density of 2. These are very lightweight effects that actually allow the material to shine through the product. I'm going to go ahead and change back to red, I think, now with this one. Okay, so you can see it a little better. The material come through. Want to close that up because my normal density is a 0.4. Change your density to a 0.4 and you have it. Now though, one of the nice things about shapes too is you do have some functions to alter the effect there. By doing an initial select and then coming down to shape, you'll have this little purple dot. You can now take this dot, move it anywhere, and that will now emanate the center point from this point in the design, and you can create some really, really cool effects by doing that. I really like the shape aspects in the software. You certainly have contour stitching. Let me go ahead and select it again so I can come in and do contour. This contour is going to scroll out from the center. Let me apply it. I'm sorry. It'll apply it. Want to change that effect. Again, it's a very open density. Come in here and let's put in like a 0.6, and you'll see you can make basically full fill stitches and such with that. You have contour stitching. You have your stippling. So just so long as it's selected, apply your stipple. Want to change the effect on your stippling, simply come in and change your density, and you'll create tighter, more like micro type stitching. One wouldn't be, if I wanted a micro stitch, I'd probably come down into the 0.6, 0.7 range, and your micro stippling at this point. So you've got stippling in there, and then this is the newest advancement to it. It's the wave stitch. So you can click on wave. Again, it does it with a very open density, but once you're in the select mode, again with it, and then you come into the shape, you're now getting your Bezier curve, so you can change this effect moving it. You can Bezier curve it, right click, and create these wonderful, wonderful wave effects. I lived in Southern California. With a little bit of effort, you know what? I'd have made waves look like they were breaking over the top of the wave, over the crest. Really, really quite amazing. Look, Kath, I still have a lot to cover, but I've got a feeling there's got to be some questions. Would we like to just take, maybe 3 or 4 questions, and then I'll continue right on?
Yes, Walter. Several of our customers have put in that they've seen the new update available. Certainly, where do they find out?
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I meant to say that right up at the beginning. Folks, anytime we release a new update, and it was just released today, you will have noticed, because when you turn on your software, you're online, it would have told you there's a new update. Going up here to the top of the screen in the My Floriani Today, that tab, click on it. It will open up this page. Anytime we release an update in Floriani Total Control or Embroidery Suite, click on What's New in Total Control or in Suite, and up it comes. Now, you certainly get a PDF version of it that you can print out. It will tell you the latest version or the version of the software. In just one second. DJ, it appears I locked up again. Are we plugged in? Just a second. It looks like my computer popped off. It's not scrolling down for me. Might have unconnected me. Hold on one second. It locked me up.
Don't worry, DJ will fix it.
I'm not going to do it. He's going to fix it for me, okay? But under What's New in Floriani, then under that PDF file, what you would have seen, I think I just got bumped off of the internet here in the office. It's no big deal. Under there, you would have seen that there are videos available, and then below the videos, you would have seen written data explaining every one of the new updates. You didn't get a chance to see them, but I'll let you know. Then in Total Control, you can now import new scalable vector graphics called SVGs. You can export artwork into Adobe Illustrator files, a whole variety of files, plotter files. What's really neat like that is you can bring up an applique, save it to a plotter file, and then actually send that file right to like an I-line cutter, one of the cutting machines that will pre-cuts or applique. I alluded a little bit about the micro thread. We've added the new R&K micro thread chart. We've announced that we're now Windows 8.1 ready. We've made some advancements to the auto digitizing wizard. While you all know I'm very into my segmented auto digitizing, we have added and continued to work on the complete auto digitizing system. We've added some new advancements to it. We've added a whole new series of hoops to your hoops. And if many of you or if some of you don't know, we were very proud to announce that my favorite needle company in the world, Schmetz, has developed a brand new chrome needle for Floriani. They are sold under the Floriani banner. So get this, Kay has already made the efforts, and when you go into Save to Sew, it will now even give you the recommended chrome needle, the new Floriani chrome needle size. I am very, very excited by that. Look, folks, so many good things, amazing things are happening. The addition of the Precious Moments designs, Precious Moments coming to me and asking me personally to get involved in the creation of Precious Moments designs was one of the highlights of my digitizing life, even though it's done by my staff of digitizers. Certainly I am involved in some of those designs themselves, but that was a wonderful I felt we were being honored when a company like that comes to us. I felt the same thing with the Schmetz needles. My entire life as an embroiderer, my favorite needle has always been the Schmetz brand of needles. For them to be willing to now take the Floriani name brand and apply it to their product line, and then to develop an entire line of chrome needles for me or for us as a company has once again staggered me, has honored my father and my family. I'm amazed by that. I can't talk too much. I get a little emotional about that stuff because, my opinion, these are the best companies in the world coming to us and saying, you know what, you've done a fine job. Your product line is pretty amazing, and we'd like to offer to be part of that product line. That I'm serious about that. I'm not playing games with you. That gets me, and I'm very, very proud of where this product line and this company has gone. And you know, I say this too. I'm getting a little carried away now, but I get a lot of accolades. But it's not me, folks. I have the most incredible distribution company in the world, working hand in hand with R&K Distributing, Rick and Kay Brooks, the Hallcraft Company. We are a great big family now. And I'm very proud of that association. They're the ones who've made this become what it's become to a certain extent. And then, not to blow your horn too much, Kathy, but it's people like yourself, it's people like DJ, it's people like Karen in support. It's all the people that are not our employees. They're in my opinion my associates. Who stand side by side with me and have as much to do with development as I do almost in a lot of these products. And I've been involved in a lot of companies in my life, but I've never seen a team like we've assembled in the Floriani team. And again, a great amount of that goes to Ricky and Kay Brooks. They are amazing people. Kath, let's take one more question and I'll move on if you have one.
Okay, Walter, on the text designs and the monogram designs, and we've got those symbols. We've got all these fun designs in here. But what happens when you resize them?
You know what, hon? That's actually a great question. I'm going to get the symbols in a bit, but I'll go ahead and show you. You know what, folks? It's kind of, I'm not going to say it's an illusion, but software will make something any size that you want it to be. So example, when I grab even just this simple arrow design, okay, and I pull on it and I drag it and I release it, is that going to work? Okay. Look, folks, I teach a theory. The software is based on it. It will continue to be more automated. I'll tell you what my thought is on that in a minute. But there are rules to stitch types. And as simply as I can put it, when you're looking at a satin stitch, let's go ahead and make another one, real tiny, okay? We'll just make it about half that side, less than that, okay? Well, is that going to work on that computer screen? Nothing on a computer screen really tells you whether any given design is going to work, okay? What makes a design work or not work is actually the size that it's created. What I mean by that, a satin stitch has a minimum width that is necessary for it to work as a satin stitch. If it gets narrower than that, it needs to be a run stitch. Okay? The minimum width of a satin stitch in the embroidery process is 1.4 millimeters. That is the digitized size. That is not the size that it's going to run, because when we run on an embroidery machine and a knot is locked in the hook, it pulls the thread and it will make this entire structure narrower. Simplest thing to do. Once you've generated a symbol, you know what? You can take this to any design you want to enlarge or decrease. When you want to take a design down in size, or you've created in this case symbols of varying sizes, look for the skinniest satin stitch in any given design. The minimum width is 1.4, so grab your ruler, be in metric, and again in Floriani it's so easy. Come to the margin area on the left or the top, right click, make sure you're in metric, measure the width of the satin stitch. You'll see that satin stitch is 2.3, 2.4 millimeters wide. Absolutely, it's going to work. Now, come up to this one, and let's measure the width of that satin. Let's zoom in so you can see it a little better. Grab your ruler, measure the width of the satin stitch. 0.7 of a millimeter. No, in fact, you look behind it and it's telling you you should be using a run. In fact, you know what? We eat garments on our embroidery machines. The primary reason why a garment gets eaten is in the execution of a satin stitch made too narrow. You're trying to make it too narrow. Because of the natural pull of the embroidery thread, it pulls in literally to the width of the thread itself. It's at that point, and only at that point, it can eat your garment. That is not going to work, okay? So just simply measure. The software itself, in giving you the hint on what stitch type to use in digitizing, it's actually defining for you right now whether it's going to work or not. That's not going to work. Now, here we go. I want it that size, all right? Is there anything that I can do to make that work? There's two things that you can try. I measured it. It's 0.7. It needs to be 1.4 millimeters. I could actually select it. I could come into my pull compensation and I can say, you know what? Because of our wonderful absolute value, I can say let's add 0.4 of a millimeter to both sides of that and apply it. Now, is that going to work? Yes. You just corrected that. Now, if it were, let's say, to close up, get a little too small, there's another option. One of the things that I love about the software, I'll take it back to the size, is we made the software so that you can integrate digitizing right into your, let's say in this case, a stock design. So why not this? Why couldn't I grab a running stitch? I'm going to go ahead and make it 3D. Why couldn't I grab another color like the purple? Why couldn't I drop a stitch here? I've got a preset stitch length at 3 millimeters. Come right up to the top here, okay? Come out here to the side, that's once. Come back, that's twice. Come down here, that's once. Come back up, that's twice. Come down here, that's twice. Step up, that's once. That's twice. I'm staying to the outside of the structure once, twice, boom, generate it. Then simply delete that one, and I just digitized on top of a very simple symbol, turning it from the wrong stitch type into the right stitch type. We tend to assume because the software can graphically produce it on the screen that it's going to work. It's not like that, folks. Stitch types have rules. The running stitch has a rule of width. If it's too narrow, it's not going to work. You can try by adding pull compensation, or you can do just what you saw me do. You know how beautiful that would stitch right there? I'd be proud to run that little double arrowhead right there. Again, it's part of the creative side. Not all software allows you to keep a design on the screen and digitize. You're taking now a part of the computer side of the program, integrating it basically into a stock embroidery design and creating a whole new design. What did that take me? All of about 30 seconds to create that, all right? Kath, I'm going to have to move on to get through what I'd like to get through.
Yes, and we are already after time.
Am I over time? Well, you know what, honey? I'm going to pull rank. I'm on a roll. I'm going to keep going. Right. I don't think any of the amount of people we have on there, I don't think they're going to mind. Let me know if you do, but
no, they look like they're happy.
I'm going to pull rank, and I'm going to keep moving on. You have an applique stitch. I would just like to show you some things with the applique stitch. Applique stitches, again, are input just like a running stitch line. So you can create just any kind of structure that you want, all with a series of left clicks, right click, and you've got an applique. In the applique, you have your values of width, certainly. You have your stitch length. You have your density, the type of cornering that you'd like. You have a placement line, your tack down line. If you had holes, you can adjust the holes within your applique. So even your tack down, everything will be generated and you'll see it on the screen. But now, I just want to stay on applique, but I want to move forward into one other aspect. One of the other things that we give you with applique is we give you a whole series of applique shapes, pre-done applique shapes. Let's click on it. Look, these are designs that we've created as that run stitch type artwork that you can turn into an applique. Want those bananas to be an applique? Double click on it, boom, it's an applique. Okay, but now, just one second, I'm going to change something. I'm going to change the background color on my screen just to a light gray and click OK. When appliques are done within Floriani software, they're always generated, and I'll highlight it again up here in the properties box. They're generated as a satin stitch applique, okay? But one of the creative sides, and I love this about our applique making, is you can always change it to an E or a blanket stitch just that quickly, okay? So you can make it an E or a blanket stitch. You can also border your applique with any of the motifs within the system. Want to apply a motif to the applique, select your motif and apply it, and you can motif stitch. But then get this, this is the highlight. The same series of symbols that we can utilize on a running stitch, or we can utilize as stock embroidery designs, merging them and creating whole scenes of designs, because you've got hundreds of these in here. We can also do things like this. Look, I can absolutely get crazy with this applique, and I can say, let's border that banana, you know what, with bananas, and simply choose my bananas, click apply, and there you go, okay? I think that's amazing. I think that's such a creative side of the software. So in all applique making, you have the ability to create that applique, satin stitch, blanket stitch, E-stitch, same thing, or utilizing the symbols in the software. Now, you have multiple types of applique, and let's go back to just that normal satin stitch applique. R&K has developed a magnificent material called Apple Stitch. Apple Stitch has basically changed applique making, because you actually have a piece of material. Look, I'll show you. Also under appliques, what's really cool is that you can come in and actually apply your fabric. So you can click down here. Well, it's not showing. You know what? I didn't load. No, there we go. There's all of my fabrics. Now, the ones that start with an AS are Apple Stitch fabrics, okay? Apple Stitch is all these series of fabrics that you can purchase from R&K. What would happen is your initial placement line would run. You don't really need it, although it's letting you know where to put the material. You would then put a piece of Apple Stitch material that's bigger than the design. You just lay it, almost like this square box, but certainly it would be bigger. All the stitching takes place, all right? Then when you're done, now, I'm going to convert this because next to your applique icon, you have your Apple Stitch icon. The differential between the two, excuse me, I've got to convert it here. I'm so sorry. You select it, right click, and say convert to an applique stitch. When I click up here, it does the applique stitch function like in digitizing. Applique stitch, it's a satin stitch applique, but it puts a running stitch line to the internal part. Because when you apply applique stitch material to this design, and I'll go ahead and apply the material, and we'll just put in, let's say, tan, or I want like a whitish, doesn't matter. I'm just going to go ahead and put in gold glitter, okay? It'll apply your applique, but now realize with the applique stitch material, it's hanging all outside your applique. It's the darndest thing. You tear it away like a piece of tearaway. There's absolutely no debris on the inside. The only differential is you have this internal line that we normally run in the color of the applique. That internal line is there so that you cannot peel or pull away the applique stitch material to the inside. You only want to pull it to the outside. It's applique making made simple like nothing that I've ever seen. Now, though, the point. With applique stitch, it's kind of like this. Applique stitch is applique stitch is applique stitch. You're not going to see, like when you come into your satin stitch, or your normal applique, you get satin, E-stitch, motif, and symbol. You do not get that choice with applique stitch because when you're in applique stitch, it has to be a satin stitch to cut to the outside. So you're limited to just the stitch type that it's in, all right? Let's move on because I am over time now. You do have your cross stitch. Cross stitch is a cross stitch. It is its effect in itself. So the functionality that you have when you select a cross stitch is you have sizes of the crosses per se. It says you apply a cross stitch, you can come in and change the sizes, let's say up larger and apply it. Excuse me, I've got to be selected. I don't know why it's hard for me to hit that select button tonight. Apply it, boom, gets bigger. You go smaller, it'll get smaller, okay? I'm also going to turn my screen back to white so you can see it a little better. You have your tackle twill, just another form of applique for sports making. It does different edging. You do not have the functionality to change it to all the different stitch types. Or tackle twill is utilized in like football jerseys. It's primarily for sports programs. Certainly next to that you have your symbols. Clicking on that down arrow, you have all your access. Again, to demo very quickly, want to make a family of butterflies, left click and hold. Just pull and drag. You can create a whole series of butterflies now. So I'm going to make a family of butterflies flocking together. You know what? I don't know if butterflies fly in a flock like that, but if indeed they do, there it is. Another side about being creative that kind of amplifies this, you'll notice over here I'm running beige, black, beige, black, beige, black. Come under edit and just hit resequence by color. Boom. Beige black. Don't think that's creative? I think that's from a running standpoint in time that has an incredibly creative aspect into it that runs that design a lot quicker than that design would have run. So those are your symbols located up here. Let's move to the next line. You have your text designs. Click on your text. You now have 140 some different text that you can bring up. Text are amazing. A couple of the things that we've done now with the text, I'm not set on it right now, but we have instituted on-screen text typing. It's under Tools and General Options. Let me go ahead and apply this. But you can actually go under Tools and General Options, and then right here under your, your view, you can now do on-screen text typing. If you haven't been in there, we also added auto backdrop panning. You can show crosshairs on your input mode. I use that a lot when I'm digitizing. Check this area out. You can highlight in different colors. I highlight in blue, but if I wanted to do it, let's say in red, click OK. What that means is when I select now, it selects it in that pre-selected color for your highlight. Some people don't know that's there. One of the nice things that I think is a creative side to your lettering is now when you go over your lettering, so I'm simply moving the cursor over here, you're now going to see all the available characters, the numbers, all the symbols associated with that alphabet, with that text file, and then at the bottom, I'll move back over it again, you're going to see the recommended height range down at the bottom. That will run very well from about 5 to 30 millimeters in height. A great advancement telling you the sizes. Want to switch to a different text? Once you have one selected, you can just scroll and you'll see it through. There's that Arial center run, okay? Now again, what makes this so wonderful is you can run it down, like I said, to about 4 millimeters with perfect clarity. Let's go ahead and change that size. 4 millimeters is very, very tiny lettering, but this lettering again is done as a bean stitch, okay? So it starts here on the top of the W, everything is forward movement through it. Incredible lettering. My gosh, I saw at one of my last events a young lady who made, it was a recipe quilt. And she had all these recipes from her grandmother, her mother, I think some from her great-grandmother. She keyboarded all of them on the blocks with that Arial center run. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Those can also be incredibly wonderful for you when you're doing in like quilting, when you're doing your patches or little labels that you're direct stitching to any given block. Having the ability to go that small with your lettering is amazing. So you have this wonderful text tool that's in there. Creativity, you have the ability to, let me just go ahead and change this to another letter style. We'll just go back to the block. You have the ability in this, excuse me, I'll highlight it again. You've got your height, certainly, letter spacing, line spacing. You can italicize your lettering, okay? You can stair step your lettering, so you can stair step it. You can also choose for the lettering, those of you who have cap frames, we've now adjusted the start and end positions, or the start position. In a slow redraw, this lettering is going to start left to right. So if I click on slow redraw, here it comes, WELCOME. But you can actually come in now and you can say, you know what, let's go ahead and start this from the right, apply it in the same function now. Come in and you'll see it starts now, works backwards. But then for cap making, there is a philosophy that's called from center out. And we have developed now the center out property on it, so you can click on it, apply it. This design will now run the CLEW and then the OME. I would imagine that's how it's going to run, CLEW, OME. So you have your center out now for your caps, okay? Now, next to that, I'm going to move right along. You do have a whole series, or you have a monogram key. When you do monogramming, what's great about the monogram, you're going to get a 3-letter monogram on the screen. You can monogram in every text file or every text type within the software. But we've also given you a series of, I believe it's 21, or excuse me, now we've added on to it. It's 45 different monogram style letters. I'll click on one, you can scroll through it. Want to select that one, just click apply. 3-letter monograms, but you get all the functionality of all those specialty style of monogram letters. And then what's really cool, creativity-wise, down at the bottom, you now have, or you've had, the top 11 monogram styles in the industry. I like that one personally. Click on it. Once you have it on the screen, if that lettering was symbolized by a green letter M, stylized letter M to the left of it, you'll now have a whole series of decor to border those monograms. Just pick your decor and it will auto fit around there. Excuse me, I gotta select it, and there you go. Notice though that as I go from monogram style to monogram style, every different monogram style has its own decor. So once you click on it, you're going to have a different set of decor for that monogram style. It will auto fit around there. More than that, though, to enhance the creativity on it, you have a whole series of monogram designs. These are additional borders that you can use. You know what? These are also wonderful as little label borders on your quilts, and that many of them are applicable to utilizing that Arial center run for your lettering in it to create your own little labels if you want to do that. The only differential with these is they do have to be sized. Once they're on the screen, you can move them into position. That one's actually a pretty good size. Want to make it a little smaller though, just come over to the edge, grab it, and just drag, and you can size. Then once you have the hand by going towards the center, you have the ability to move it around any monogram that you want. So you do have a whole series of monogram borders, okay? You also have in the software text designs. And there are a ton of these text designs. Designs you integrate with your text. I'll show you a very simple example. My daughter's name is Scarlett. Many times I'll go ahead and I'll pick that red S, just move it over here to the side. I'll grab my text tool at this point in time. I'll come in and I will write the rest of her name. Now look, I can even write text in monogram style letters. Not that you're going to want to, certainly, but you do have that ability, so it just expands out on the creative side of your fonts by giving you the usage of those as more fonts. I'm not even going to look for this one, but I'll do that. I'm going to bring it on the screen to fit. I'm going to move it into position, but then you know what I can do too? I've told Scarlett since she was a baby that she's my little monkey, so I can come back into my text designs. I can scroll down, find my little monkey. I can double click on it, up it comes on the screen. I can now hang that monkey right from the letter L in her name, and you can create some magnificent designs utilizing the text designs, and there are hundreds of them in there. Different alphabet styles I use for caps at the beginning of lettering, and then a whole series of designs in themselves to amplify your text and what you do with it. You also have next to that, you have your monogram designs. You saw those are the borders. You have motif shapes. These are shapes that you can use, and let's come in and just grab one. It will automatically apply the motifs within the software, but again, you can apply a standard run stitch one time, two ply, the bean stitch, the motifs, or the symbols. Why you might want to use anchors, I don't know, but anchors away, and you can apply anchors even to those motif shapes. You get a whole series of motif shapes, and then of course we're going to finish up with the applique shapes. Again, these are all pre-done applique shapes. DJ has added another series or series like with the lettering, basketball, soccer, and softball and such. Pre-made appliques, click on it, boom, up they come on the screen, done, ready to go. He did a fine job when he did those appliques. Now though, one other thing that I'd like to clarify just before we're done, I talked about the embossing, being able to do the true type text and applying that to your library. You know what though, folks? You also have that same ability with your motifs. You can now create your own motifs and you can apply it into there. The motif designs. You also can apply symbols. Example, I have a very famous little jumping tiger design that I love. I put it in here as both a full design and then just as an outline. I'm just taking an existing design and I'm just saving it in my motif library. You can add your own materials to your appliques. You're limitless. You're absolutely limitless. I have gone well over my time. That's what happens when you can pull a little rank. I hope you've all enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed giving this webinar. This was really a fun one for me. I hope you see that it is more than that running, that sat, and that filled, that there is an amazing amount of functionality within the software. Our pledge to you is that this software is going to just keep growing and it's going to keep going. So, Kathy, thank you. DJ, thank you. Entire staff, and there are a bunch of you out there answering all the questions. I've seen a ton of them coming through. Thank you for all your efforts. We wouldn't be the company that we are without all of you behind the scenes. I love you all. To all of my clients out there, I love you all. Hugs and stitches to you, everyone. I'll see you next time. Kathy, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, Mr. Walt. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kathy.